everybody, this is Dennis Labriola, and I want to welcome you to another installment of Seventh Inning Stretch, the podcast. And this is where we talk about the importance of the relationships that we have as how they impacted us in our lives and, well, how our relationships also impact other people in their lives. And today we're going to be talking about fatherhood. And not really from a clinical perspective, but from just a common, normal, everyday experience, real type position. All right. And hopefully, because listen, we all have experiences with our dads and our parents and what have you. And sometimes those relationships are a little bit difficult to navigate. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And sometimes they even leave daddy wounds. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But today's guest is someone very, very dear to me. He's part of my family, and that's all good. But he really has an amazing resume and a bio. So let me just tell you a little bit about who my favorite gentleman is. And that is that, listen, he's an entrepreneur. He is a business coach, not just a business coach, but really a life coach. And he is extremely successful. He's got a wonderful, I guess, position or story regarding his own dad and who he has become as a dad, because he's married. He's got kids of his own, and I thought it would be really wonderful if we could talk just kind of in that way. But he's also a public speaker. I mean, he has been invited to go all across different groups, all across the country and internationally.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. So I'm very, very proud of him. Would you please welcome Michael Monaco?
Hello, everybody. It is good to be here with Dennis. Dennis, I have to say this before we even get started. Dennis is one of my favorite people to talk to about fatherly advice. I know obviously we're going to get into it, but I lost my dad when I was 18 years old. And my dad was my hero. He was everything to me, my best friend. And I went on obviously, as any young man would do, I went on a journey just to seek guidance from some of the greatest men that I could find. Mm-hmm. And I think anytime I have a question about anything that pertains to my faith, anything that pertains to family aspect, family dynamic, one of the few men that I lean on and rely on is Dennis Labriola.
Well,
and
appreciate
I
you,
just
buddy.
I love you very much.
And
I appreciate doing this with you.
Yeah, well, this is it's going to be fun. So we're going to have a conversation today, and hopefully you're going to draw something from this that maybe you could relate to and make it part of your life. I want to thank you for, by the way, he's got a really, really busy schedule, so he's taking time out, and I really appreciate that. So I want to start with a statement that I believe to be a fundamental fabric of a person's development. And that really is to identify the importance of a man in a child's life, specifically in a young man's life. Because I think in our culture, that kind of gets watered down very, very, well, let's just say it's not a good thing. All right. So do you agree with that kind of a statement as to just the importance, not just for yourself, but overall culturally, the importance of a man, of a man and a proper example that he can give in a child's life in their development?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think every young man and every young woman needs a great man in their life.
Yeah.
I think that men have a very, very important role in society. And it's very important for men to understand how to be good men, not just live as a man or a male, and be macho and be tough guy and what society thinks that a man is or a man isn't. But what God thinks a man is and what a man isn't.
Yeah, he kind of sets it, and that's kind of the problem, I mean, so most of us, all of us, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
We're all flawed. We all mess up. We all get some of it right, a lot of it wrong. And so here's the problem that we have. So how can a man
Mhm.
who at best is flawed
Mm,
by the limitations of his own father, his
mhm.
grandfather, his generations. I mean,
Very true.
it just gets passed down.
Mhm.
Um, where and how do we find the resources really to sow to our own kids?
Mm. I mean, that's a really good question. There are a lot of resources out there. I just I wanna make sure that all the resources that I use to develop myself as a man
Mm.
um, are biblical.
Mhm.
And every man is flawed, like you said. But I wanted to have a group of men, not just one man that I relied on, but a group of men,
Mhm.
you, Charlie, Vinny, and maybe a couple other men in my life
Mhm.
that I could rely on, I can count on. And when maybe one of those men is not 100% in one area, I can go to another one.
Yeah.
Um, I think example is everything.
Mhm.
And knowing that sometimes the people that you pick as mentors in your life, they're not going to be perfect either. And allowing those people to make mistakes, allowing those people to be flawed, um, I think that's an important part of being a mentee,
Mm.
right? And being somebody that is seeking the guidance and seeking the help is knowing that, you know, that person that's going to mentor you and guide you, they're not perfect,
Yeah,
but they
that's true.
do have some really amazing qualities, or they might say some really amazing things that would impact you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be stuck in a point where I'm judging that person for who they are, who they're not, or what they have or what they don't have in their life, but that I'm just using the value that they can give to me.
Yeah, and that's important. I think we all have a desire to be good dads.
Mm.
One of the I guess you and I know each other for, I guess, what, 15, 16 years now?
More,
More?
more. I'm married.
You're married,
I'm married. Oh
going
no, I'm going
going
on
on 15.
15 years. So yeah, probably 16 years.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
correct. You're
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
So no, it's okay. And so for me, kind of as the older guy, I've had a privilege of watching you as you became a husband,
Mm.
as you became a father. All right. Giving me a grandniece and a grandnephew,
Mhm.
they're wild. I love them. I found you to be very intentional
Mhm.
as to how you were seeking to become a good husband and a good father.
Mhm.
That you did not really just say, well, it'll happen because
Right.
it's going to happen.
Right.
You were very intentional when it came to that. You were seeking knowledge about how to become a good dad, what kind of things were important.
Yeah.
Was that in fact intentional for you?
100%. I believe that you have to ask good questions to good people. If you don't ask good questions to good people, in other words, the right questions to the right people, you can ask the right question, but it could be the wrong person.
Yeah, that's true.
Or you could ask the wrong question to the right person, and you're still not going to get the answer that you need.
Right.
So you really have to think about what it is that you need.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's all about self-discovery a little bit too.
Yeah.
I had a lot of counseling that I went through, and
Okay.
sometimes people go, "Oh,
That's a
you
resource. Counseling is a
right. I
resource.
mean, you went to counseling. How can you go to counseling?" And when my dad first passed away, my mom wanted to send me to counseling. I was so against it
Yeah.
because I sat across the table from a guy and he didn't lose his dad. So I'm like, "How do you know what I'm going through?
Yeah, right. How do
You
you
didn't.
feel what I feel?
You don't have any idea what I'm going through right
Yeah.
now." And but
You said you were 18 when
I
you
was
said
8. I was young.
young. Well, your
I
dad was
was a
young.
baby. My dad was 44.
Yeah, that's young.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I'm 42 right now.
So tell me a little bit about your relationship with your dad, because I know a little bit about it, but our audience may not. Because, listen, not everyone has a good dad, and we
That's correct.
so appreciate the fact that your story may be very different than Michael's and even my own. I had a good dad. I had a good dad. And I had an amazing dad, really, and he passed just shy of 96 years. So, Michael's dad, what I understand, just as amazing, but kind of, 44. That's
Right.
that's way too young.
Right.
But tell me a little bit about him.
Before I get into my dad, I gotta say, your dad was amazing. He really was. I've known Tony, for probably 13 years, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And he just was always happy, always smiling, always great to see you. Great to see you. Just a man of faith. Really, I appreciated him in my life too.
Yeah. Thank you.
My dad was a very unique man. I think that my dad and I had a lot of similarities as far as character traits and personality traits. But he had a lot of friends. He ran a car wash and limousine business, so he was a businessman, entrepreneur. When the car wash wasn't doing so well, when it was raining and snowing, he found a way to create income when it was raining and snowing. So he set up the limousine. He was an entrepreneur at heart, right?
Yeah.
And he
We
always
figure out a way.
we entrepreneurs figure it out, right? So he really kind of took his life and dabbled in a few different things, but he had a mentor. His dad was his mentor. And he would always say to me, like, this is what Papa recommended that we do. And he kind of taught me mentorship from early on.
Wow.
My dad had a handicap. I don't know if you knew this.
I didn't.
My dad had 4 fingers on his right hand.
Really?
And he had a lot of surgeries as a kid. And he got picked on a lot. And he was very close because he was an only child. He was very close with his dad and his mom. And his dad, my grandpa, Arthur, he took him to all these surgeries and took him to all these hospitals. And so my dad was indefinitely indebted to my grandpa, and he always did things with my grandfather, and he always included my grandfather. And it was like, if we didn't call grandpa for a couple of weeks, he'd be like, "Oh, you got to call your grandpa. Like, don't not call grandpa." But he always taught us how to have a father-son relationship. However, I do have to say that looking back on it now and learning some of the things that I've learned, my dad would always say to my mom that he felt like he couldn't be his own man because he was always under the thumb of my grandfather. And so my grandfather was a little bit controlling.
Right.
And controlled the business part of it, controlled my dad and things like that. And my dad kind of felt like he wanted to step out from that and be his own man because they had saved money together, they had done things together. And he didn't really have his own separate.
Interesting.
But that's because my dad was, they say love is blind, right? My dad was so indebted to my grandfather from all the years of him taking him to surgeries and all the things that he had to overcome with his hand, that he just felt, who am I to buck my dad?
Question.
Who am I to question him? All that he's done for me. I don't have the right to stand up to him and question him. So I'm just going to kind of, maybe I might make a suggestion, but whatever he says goes.
So little sidebar here. That's one of the things we call a daddy wound. A daddy wound is something that our dads, unintentionally, almost all the time, but something that they may do. And a lot of times people, when they talk about, especially if maybe your relationship with your dad wasn't so good, what happens is that, you end up developing a belief about how you should be or how you should act or something like that based on something that your dad may have done or said or what have you. And we always think of the horrible things, right? The abuse. We talk about, my dad was abusive, or my dad, never told me he loved me, or, we have a lot of these kinds of things. But sometimes they're not always just that drastic. Sometimes it's just having something like that, where your dad your grandfather was very serious about business. Your dad dealing with, the fact of everything that your grandfather did for him, it kind of made him indebted in a way that shouldn't have been, but yet it was, because we're flawed. We're all, we're all flawed. So I'm going to ask you a question that it's almost impossible to answer.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you think about it for a minute. And the question is this. All right. Our dads always teach us different things, right? And, and what I know about your dad, talk about entrepreneurship, talk about you know, how he cared for your mom, how he cared for you and your siblings, being the provider that he was. A lot of this, all good stuff, right? And I'm sure not perfect stuff, but good stuff. From that, and again, I'm not going to ask you to answer right away. I'll give you an example from me.
Okay.
But if you could pick the one thing that if your dad said, I want you to learn one thing from our relationship together. Is there that one thing?
100%.
So that quick.
That quick.
All right. Can you share it?
Charisma.
Charisma.
Yeah.
Nice.
He taught me confidence and charisma.
Wow.
He taught me how to carry myself as a man.
Wow.
He taught me respect.
Yeah.
And he taught me honor. And that all is in his charisma was the respect and the honor and the confidence that he carried himself with.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from him, observing him.
Yeah.
Is the respect.
And he has charisma. He does. He has charisma. It's one of the reasons I asked you to be on here. Then I just look at him.
They call it Riz now. They call it Riz.
They call it Riz.
Riz.
Okay.
All right.
That's interesting. And what I found really interesting is how fast he came to that point. Because I think that, and I think it's important for all of you watching this, that give yourself a few moments and ask yourself that question of all the things that mom did or dad did, could be either or both. That could be, you know, there's usually, I find that there's usually something that kind of stands out, you know. And you mentioned all these things, honor, right? He mentioned all this, right? Work ethic, I'm sure, those kind of, same thing with my dad. My dad, work ethic, honor, loyalty, you know, honesty, integrity. These are things, you know. But for me, all of those things added up to loving somebody unconditionally. My dad knew how to love people, and that's what I learned from him. And that's great, you know, to be able to have that. Now, again, for some of you who like, I never even knew my dad. I mean, he wasn't in my life at all. Well, you know, it's a tough thing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Can I say something about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Two things. So, first thing about if you didn't know your dad, if you didn't know your dad at all, or if you didn't have a dad growing up, maybe you lost him when you were really, really young, or he's incarcerated, or whatever that might be. Your parents got divorced when you were young and you moved away out of the state and you really don't have a relationship with your dad. Here's what I'm going to mention to you. You now get to choose your fatherly mentor and dad, so to speak, the person that fathers you. You get to choose that. Some people don't get to choose that, and they're stuck with the person that they have fathering them,
right?
And which may be good or may not be good. But if you don't have that, you now get to choose. So choose wisely.
Yeah.
Choose wisely. Choose the people in your life, or maybe they're not even in your life yet, but that you can seek out for guidance. And I think the biggest thing with that is communication.
Yeah. I think that, and this is the point, you know, whether you have a dad or you don't have a dad, if you don't have a dad, it doesn't negate the need to be fathered. It doesn't negate that. Yeah. All right. You still have that need. And guess what? You know, I'm 70. I know I look really good. I know, but I keep telling myself that.
You do look good.
But the point is, the need never leaves. You're always going to have someone in your life that's going to be able to show you a little bit of further down the journey about something that you haven't experienced that they have. So
well, there's wisdom in that.
There is wisdom in that.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. You know, if somebody's bought 2 or 3 homes and you've never bought a home before, it makes sense to ask somebody, you know, what are some of the things I can look out for?
Yeah, but our culture doesn't want us to do that.
Well,
our culture says, I got this. Our culture says, you know, that, you don't, don't be needy. You don't need another guy. You know.
Yeah. So I think that's foolish.
It is.
I think it's completely foolish. I think the man who tries to counsel himself is being counseled by a fool.
I think that's actually a scripture someplace.
It is a script. It is scripture.
I
It's in
think I've read
Proverbs.
that somewhere.
It's in Proverbs. But it's so true that wisdom comes with experience.
Yeah.
But if it's your own experience, it's going to cost you time and money.
Mm,
And you may not even get to the true answer.
that's true.
But if it's somebody else's experience, you save time and money
Right.
and you could progress. That's why every generation should be better than the generation before it.
Why don't we see
You
that?
know, we do see that in
We
some
do?
cases.
Oh.
We do see it in some cases. And people, you know, you can call it whatever you want, but I think society is labeling it privilege, where they say, oh, these kids are growing up with privilege but here's the thing.
I like that.
It's only privilege because of what the generation before it has done.
Yeah.
The generation before it has to work really hard, has to teach the right values, has to be completely intentional with the things that they do, how they lead their families, how they teach their families. And then the next generation can take that teaching and add to it.
Yeah.
Every generation is supposed to get better and better and better,
Yeah.
right? As long as the next generation coming has appreciation for what the generation before it did.
Yeah. And that's something they have to learn too.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us, if you have teenage kids, you don't yet, but you will. All right.
Don't push that. Don't rush me.
I'm not. But you know, when your child is 13, 14, it's funny how you become an idiot. And when they become 22, 26, we become brilliant.
The smartest person in the
I
world.
know, isn't it? You know? And I'm so glad that
Yeah.
education really happens. But now, all right, so just getting back to fatherhood for a second, because ultimately, you know, I know that, you know, he's a man of faith. Faith is important to me as well. And faith says that God is really our ultimate father, right? He is the one, and I believe that he absolutely is. But I do
100%.
find that God uses other men to kind of be his hands and his feet and his voice,
Absolutely.
to help us navigate our life, navigate the things that we don't know yet. I mean, when you became a husband, you didn't know. You know, it's funny.
I didn't know.
No one gave me a manual when I became a dad. I mean,
Exactly.
they probably should have. All right, maybe there was some out there. Dr.
Exactly.
Spock is. I'm sure that's the right one. All right, nothing against Dr. Spock, but I'm just saying that. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about too is that, you know, we mentioned before a little bit about a daddy wound, because so often how we perceive our earthly fathers, that is also how we perceive our heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful there, because our heavenly Father is perfect. Our heavenly Father, you know, and I think though that God, if we allow God to bring other men into our life, you said something really important a little bit ago, and that is that if you didn't have a dad, you get the opportunity to select someone to fill that void, to fill that role. That's also true for those of us who have dads, that we get, because it can't be just our dad. All right. You know, the Bible does say that safety is in a multitude of counsel.
Correct.
All right. And it's godly counsel, or it's good counsel. So you had mentioned a couple of other men in your life. And we talk about, I want to get into talking a little bit about mentorship, how that works. I want to talk a little bit about how do you find a mentor.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about how do you become a good mentee. All right. I think those are important things in our society now. But you have had other men in your life. Talk about that a little bit.
So 19 years ago, I started my first company. And I met a gentleman that reminded me and had certain qualities that reminded me of my dad. And
now, how long has your dad gone?
My dad is gone. It's going to be 24 years.
24 years.
January 15th.
So, all right. So 24 years ago, your dad passed. 19 years ago, someone else came into your life.
Correct. So there's about a 4 or 5 year gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And in that gap, I was wild.
Yeah.
I was a wild young man. I
Yeah.
got into a lot of fist fights.
Yeah.
I just did a lot of things that were just kind of leashing out, I guess. Very rebellious. if you will.
Well, you're a lot of pain, a lot of
I
pain,
was in a lot of pain.
uncertainty,
Yeah.
pain. I mean, why
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
I mean, I think using the word you use as, wild,
Yeah.
is probably as accurate as you can get. Yeah.
I was wild. So when this gentleman, his name is Vinny Pappalardo.
Mhm.
Some of you know him. When Vinny came into my life, I didn't know right away that he was going to be that type of a father figure for me. But over time, I saw the qualities that he had, and he had a very loving and fatherly way about him
Mm.
that I had recognized in my own father.
Mm.
And I gravitated towards that because there was a void.
Mhm.
It was absolutely a void.
Mm.
And look, my dad's not perfect. Vinny Pappalardo's not perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Right.
Charlie's not perfect. But there were so many really amazing things that Vinny did for me, and he filled the love void from another man.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing. And
Because he did love you.
he loved me.
Yeah.
He loved me. He took to me. I took to him. I was eager, and I really wanted to generate financial independence in my life, and I was eager, and I was ambitious, and I was excited to put my work ethic in and put my my charisma to the test, right?
Mhm.
And Vinny saw these character traits and qualities in me, and he brought the best out in me.
Mm.
And he loved me no matter what I did or didn't do.
Right.
I had cried on his shoulder many, many times.
Yeah.
And he loved me no matter what.
Yeah.
He never judged me. And he always gave me love.
Yeah. Now, those are traits in him that you had to discover.
Correct.
Because initially,
Yeah.
all right, there was maybe a little personality thing, and he was, and like you said, you were looking to start a company, you were looking to, to generate some additional income, and it was a business thing
Right.
initially, all right, and and you saw him as someone who could help you in that way. From his perspective, only because I know that that's who I am now, as I've learned, I know that's who you are now, is that when we are, I guess, being what's the right word? Initially working on a relationship with someone new, we meet them through a business world, but we don't approach it. I don't approach it from a business. I approach it to say, I need to get to know you.
Relationship.
I want it right. I want to
100%.
find out how can I really help you. We talk about putting people before profit in our business. But that's really the truth of the matter, is that we look for people. I know that Vinny looked at you initially and said, here's a young man. He probably knew that you were hurting. All right. Probably very, very early on, he said, here's a guy pretty sharp, got some potential. All right. Maybe we can do some business together, but he's also thinking it's not about business.
Right.
It's about sowing into your life.
Correct.
And then you discovered this love that he had for you, and it grew, I'm sure.
That's who Vinny was. That's who he is.
Yeah.
He did that with probably hundreds of other people. Excuse me.
At least.
At least. He did it with hundreds of other young men.
Yeah.
But for me, I felt like it was personal. Even though maybe he said the same things to me that he said to so many other people, for me, it was like he just said it to me. And I held on to those words.
Yeah.
Because he spoke life into me. And that made me fiercely loyal. Fiercely loyal, fiercely wanting to and willing to communicate with him, even my darkest secrets and things that I don't know how to overcome.
Yeah.
Just open up completely to him and say, this is exactly who I am. This is my life. These are my finances. This is my relationships.
But he earned that by showing a consistent caring for you.
And compassion.
Yeah. And, so as you start to develop that relationship, and this is true in any relationship, as you start to develop a relationship, you're able to open up a little bit more, right? You kind of get a little bit deeper. One of the things that I recommend to a lot of men is to have what we call a SEAL team. All right. A SEAL team is, 3 to 5 other guys that are kind of in your circle, and you kind of just talk about it's not really a mentorship mentee relationship. It's a peer-to-peer
It's like a
relationship.
brotherhood.
Yeah. And but what happens is that as you start to develop that relationship and that level of trust, then the dark things that bother us, we kind of bring out. Well, in this kind of relationship that you have too, is that he really provides a lot of that. And as you develop that relationship, it was almost like, gee, if I'm having a problem at home, I can talk to him.
Mhm.
If I'm having a problem with my investments, I can talk to him. If I'm having a problem with how I feel, if I'm having a problem with dealing with some of the pain I may still be carrying from when dad passed,
Definitely.
these are
Mhm.
things that, that these are all life things.
Mhm. You know what Vinny was really good at doing though was listening to me.
Mm.
He would listen and then he would give me really good advice. He wouldn't be sympathetic, he'd be empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And he would give me love and empathy. And then he would give me really good advice on how to correct things and change things and how to mold me and shape me. And it was into the man that I wanted to become.
Mm.
So I just valued all his advice. And I didn't call Vinny and dump on him. Like I
Right,
didn't just
right.
dump my problems on him. I don't think any mentor wants somebody to do that, where you're just dumping all of your problems and situations, and all you're doing is complaining and
Mhm.
moaning,
Mm.
and there's no good in that.
Yeah.
I brought my situations to Vinny looking for a solution,
Mm-hmm.
not just to complain.
Yeah, right.
You
It's
know,
not just to bring drama. It's really
yeah.
to say, hey, I got a problem. I want to fix it. All right. So yeah,
Some people they just want to bring drama because they want to feel like they're being heard, and they don't want to fix anything in their life. They just want somebody to hear them out. That's you're never going to go anywhere
no. Well, that's not really
by
what
doing that.
And we're going. I want to. Well, let's shift gears slightly here. All right. I want to talk about. So you were seeking out someone to help you business wise, and you found Vinny. Vinny
Mhm.
became one of your mentors.
Mm.
All right. So now, for someone who may not have that kind of relationship with anybody, all right, how would you suggest that they start to seek out
Mhm.
the person if they feel it? I need someone. I need someone like a Vinny in my life. All right. How would they go about actually?
I
How would
think
this start?
I think that believe it or not, they probably have somebody that is in one of the spheres of influence that they might have access to that could potentially be that person. They just haven't explored it. You might be in school and there might be a professor, there might be a coach, there might be somebody at your church, there might be somebody at your job, or maybe you part-time job somewhere.
Yeah.
There might be somebody that is in your family that you just admire them from afar. Anybody that you feel that you admire from afar, I'm going to encourage you, call them up, ask them to grab lunch together, grab coffee.
Yeah.
Pick their brain, have some questions written out for them as to if you're kind of feeling them out a little bit to see if they are going to be a potential good mentor.
Yeah.
If they're willing to accept a mentee or have a mentee.
Well, that's another question too. Not
Right.
everyone is willing to fill that role. They don't
Right.
want that responsibility. So you have to find someone, and that's why I think it's important that you have more than one person, because not any one person is going to be able to do it all. You have to end up with a God figure.
Yeah.
You can't have that.
No.
All right, that's not
Yeah.
healthy. No. So and I think it's important to develop, and there are a couple of books out there that you can about, how do I become a mentor? What's my mindset to become a mentor, or to be mentored? Maybe that's a better word. How do I find and be willing to be the mentee, the proper mentee? What kind of mindset do you need?
Excuse me. I think it's that you're the one that's initiating the relationship. And
That's important. The mentee is the one to initiate the relationship.
yeah, that's huge, because the mentor has a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of wisdom, and they could give it to somebody, but they're not going to just give it to just anybody, and they're not just going to talk. They're going to wait till the right person comes along that proves that they really want what that want that wisdom, they want that knowledge, they want the understanding, they're going to apply it in their life. And for me, it was all about relationships.
Yeah.
How can I build a better relationship with you? How can I build a better relationship with Charlie? How can I build a better relationship with Vinny? How can I build a better relationship with some of the other men in my life? You know, and it's the first number one thing about any relationship is communication and honesty.
Yeah.
Is being open and honest and communicating a lot. If you think about any of the relationships that you have in your life, the best relationships you have are the people that you communicate with the most. Right? And the people that you could be the most honest with and most vulnerable with, and they're not judging you, and they're not holding that against you in any way. Right? And so just to be forthcoming with all that communication, and then it begins to become reciprocated when they know that you're serious about accepting the wisdom, accepting the advice, accepting the counsel.
Yeah.
You know,
we probably all have somebody in because I do. I have people in my life that they only come to me when they need certain things. They never talk to me any other time. And frankly, they never listen to what I say. All right. Anyway, and, you know, and I've learned some things over time. I mean, you know, I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but, you know, but I can cut a steak. So, you know, but sometimes, and you may find that, but don't be that. You know, if you're going to develop a relationship, be the person to say, I really want to change. Because without having that mental capacity to say, I want to change something in my life, I want to, you know, I want to learn something in my life. You can learn from, you know, and you have to talk, the mentor that you're going to talk to, they have to have success there.
Right.
Don't talk to somebody who has been, you know, like married 22 times about having a relate, unless you want to find out what not to do, which may not be a bad thing to learn either. All right. But if I want to find out how to have a great marriage that lasts my whole life, and how do I navigate through that, I want to talk to somebody who's done it. I want to talk to somebody who's been married happily for 50 years and happily is, you know, you're not going to be happy all the time, but overall, you're going to be, you know, you're going to be happy and have the fruit on the tree. Same thing in business. Same thing if I'm going to buy a car, I'm probably talking to my brother-in-law, Charlie, because he knows a lot about cars. All right. It's just, you know, to me, that's just smart. Why would I talk to somebody who only has a bicycle? He's not going to get it.
Exactly. 100%.
But
some people take financial advice from people that are broke.
Yeah.
Some people take relationship advice from people that don't have good relationships.
They're broke too.
Right. And, you know, it's because maybe those are the people that are closest to them.
Yeah.
They're not seeking people outside of their closest sphere of influence. See, Vinny says all the time, you know, that Charlie, your brother-in-law, my father-in-law, excuse me, Vinny's mentor in the beginning, he said that Charlie said to find someone in life who's where you want to be. Right? He pointed. Yeah. Find somebody who is in life where you want to be. Find out what they did to get there. See if they'll mentor you and coach you, and then do what they did, and one day you'll have what they have.
And that's true in any aspect of life.
And the reason why he points is because he's trying to say that person is not anywhere near you. You have to go seek that person out. Yeah. They probably are not in your current sphere of influence. They might be, but they're probably not. Yeah. Because if they were, you probably wouldn't be in the situations you're in now. Right? If you had all these great advisors that are around you. But to go out and seek someone that's not in your immediate sphere, that also takes guts. Yeah. It takes guts because you now have to, you're like interviewing people almost.
Well, right? I think it's you are interviewing people in a way. I mean, you know, and listen,
not officially, but
don't look unofficially. They're interviewing you too, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a relationship. You see, if you just want my counsel, you know, you can pay an hourly fee and I'll give you my counsel. If you want me to love you and just have a relationship with you, then it's a two-way street, right?
Absolutely.
So, and this is the other thing too, you know, you may find somebody who's really successful in business, but they're really unsuccessful in their personal relationships.
Mm.
All right. You don't need to take both. You take what you need from. That's why it's important to have other people.
Right.
Now, mentorship.
You don't go to your personal trainer for financial advice.
No.
You don't go for your financial advisor for health advice. Right? You pick who you go to. You don't go to the foot doctor because you got a toothache. Right? So you pick the people that are really good at what they do.
I think I've done that once.
Our life is like spokes on a wheel.
Yeah.
There's a financial spoke.
Yeah.
There's a relationship spoke. There's a health spoke. There's a spiritual spoke.
Yeah.
There's mental health. There's all these different spokes. And you can have multitude of different counselors for each spoke.
Yeah. You
right?
probably should.
Yeah, and you probably should.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to try to have the best well-balanced life that you can. The marriage spoke.
Right.
The parenting spoke.
So here we are talking about mentors and mentees. We talked a little bit about fatherhood in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
To relate, they are related, just so that you know, because most likely, if you had a dad who's attentive, like as we did,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what the subject was, we went to dad probably first.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, it's we're around the holidays as we're recording this. All right. And there's a great movie, one of my favorites, holiday movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Jimmy Stewart.
Everyone has seen it. But there's a scene in that, and early on, when he's a child, and he's having an issue because he's come across a problem and he doesn't know what to do. And he remembers a little sign that said, "Ask Dad." Now, Dad, can be one of those mentors in your life, can be your natural father, can be a heavenly father, right? Can be a spiritual father, all right? Those are the ones that we're to go ahead and we're to ask. So all of this that we're talking about is all really part of fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's all part of that. So let me ask you one other question. Well, maybe more than one.
As many as you want.
In the beginning,
Yes.
you were the mentee.
That's correct.
You sought out mentors in your life that helped you to navigate through this crazy life that we have sometimes, a wonderful life that we have sometimes, but it can be a little nutty too at times. And now you have grown as a man. You became a dad yourself, and you have both your daughter and your son. And I'm so proud of you because he's a good dad. He's a good dad.
Thank you.
But there are a lot of other people in your life that you now find yourself as the mentor in their life.
Correct.
How do you get your mind around that?
It's a privilege. It is a privilege for sure. I don't take it lightly. I know the value that it had in my life. And so, the ability to mentor somebody else and coach someone else and guide someone else in multiple areas of life, or help them find the right resources for some areas in life, I don't take it lightly. I'm very careful with what I say, especially if I know that they're going to do what I say. I think that someone is in that type of a submissive role to you, you have an obligation to do right by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that sometimes people don't want to put themselves in that submissive role because they're afraid that if they do, that they have to do whatever this person says or the mentor says. And that's not really how it works. No. You actually have a lot of power over that mentor or over that person when you are in a submissive role, because they want to do right by you in every area. So I look at it as a major privilege, Dennis.
Yeah.
And I look at it as I'm also trying to teach them how to be a good mentee also. Because a lot of times if someone does have daddy issues, they really don't know.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of that. And sometimes people act a certain way or do a certain thing. And I'm like, well, has anybody ever taught them? Like just simple things,
right.
Simple things to do.
And
like,
sometimes they haven't.
And really the answer to that is most of the time, no, they don't have anybody that's taught them that. Vinny taught me how to tie a tie. He taught me how to shine my shoes. He taught me how to wear a suit and how to hang up my suit after how to press clothing, how to press a pair of slacks, and how to press a shirt. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
I didn't have
All seems like simple things.
Simple, so
But
simple.
there's important things because it's all part of a fabric of who a person becomes.
Right.
And so, yeah. And I think that,
How to shave. I mean,
yeah,
my dad, I was 18 years old when my dad passed away. I might have shaved a little bit, but he didn't really teach me how to shave. Vinny literally taught me how to shave my face. and as silly as that sounds,
it doesn't.
it's something that I do.
It's actually pretty precious.
Many times a week.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of precious.
yeah. But it makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And
you may have some of these daddy wounds, and they may actually be a stronghold in your life. We have a saying that a stronghold is a lie believed and then lived. All right, because we hear something over and over and over again, and all of a sudden we start to believe it, but it's not necessarily true. You do not have to live in lack. You don't have to carry all this pain with you. You really don't. And I think that many of us feel that, well, you know what, these are the cards I'm dealt. Well, you know what? Throw those cards away and get some new cards.
Yeah.
You can,
100%.
right? The dealer is willing to give you some additional cards. So, yeah.
If I could add to what you're saying.
Yeah, please.
The more you do something, what I've learned is the more that you do something, the more the habit gets shaped and formed, the deeper the roots go to that habit. And the deeper the roots go, the harder it is to push that tree over.
Yeah.
So the neural pathways in your brain that start to formulate when you start to do things over and over again, it's harder to break habits.
Yeah.
But also it's hard to break good habits too. So if you set yourself in motion with really good habits, it's hard to break those good habits because those roots are so deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
Same thing with bad habits.
Right.
Most people have bad habits that the roots are deeply ingrained.
Right.
But you got to dig it up from the root.
Yeah.
You can't try to push the tree or nudge the tree or nudge the habit away from your life if you know it's a bad habit.
Right.
Some people have financial problems because they have bad financial habits.
Right. Sure.
Some people have relationship problems because they have bad relationship habits.
Right.
It's all. Some people have parenting problems because they just have bad habits. They get angry and they take it out on their kids.
Right. Right.
I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And it's when you don't pull up those habits by the root, they don't change.
Right. Well, you cut, just think about it. You cut the weed down at the ground level. You do nothing with the roots. A few weeks later, it's growing again. Right. So
I hate weeds.
Yeah, me too. So, so we have something that, if you talk about there's something in my life that I don't want into my life, right? And there's a great word, it's expunge. I want to expunge that out of my life. It's basically dealing with the roots of that whole thing. But if you don't do anything to fill that void of what you just took out, you need to exchange that for something else. So it's to expunge and exchange. You need to get rid of the bad habit and put in a good habit. The Bible says that, if you clean the room, if you sweep the room of all the bad stuff, all right, and you leave it vacant, then the demons come back, all right, and they bring a bunch of others.
More than what was there.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing, if you're going to really embrace the idea of being fathered, of having men in your life. And if you're a woman on here, my daughter, she had great women in her life. All right. I believe that it's kind of the same, no matter guy or gal, it doesn't really matter, male or female.
Yeah. Mother power is just as important.
Yeah. Mother power is just as important. And they're, so this is all things that you need to kind of, look at. And, but you don't have to be stuck, I think is what I want to say.
Yeah. And I think that, a mother is, I don't want to say has to love their child, but a mother has a different connection to the child than the father.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you're right.
the mother has the genes and the blood of the mom stays in that child for 8 years after they're born. You know,
Is that right?
and I read something that like if you yell at the child, it's like you're yelling directly at the mom. Like the mom gets angry because you're like they feel it internally. The father, on the other hand, has a choice.
Yeah.
And the father chooses to be a good father to you.
Yeah.
The father chooses to love you. They choose to care for you. There are so many fathers that choose to run away from that responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you have a father that chooses you, I mean, that's got to be one of the most amazing things.
Yeah.
In your heart to feel and to know that this person doesn't have to do this, but they're doing it because they love me.
And I think that's one of the things when you're looking for those mentors in your life, you know, it's almost like you're looking for them to adopt you in a way. And, you know, and I always look
That's
at,
a really good way to say it.
well, because, you know, listen, adoption is a wonderful thing because the person who's being adopted is selected and chosen. And it's decision on the parent to say, I want you. And, you know, so that's the importance of this mentee relationship, you know. So we're going to close. And I want to just say this. I hope that you find something that was, well, valuable to you during this podcast. I want to thank you so much for the insight that we have. And if you were able to take something away, and maybe you brought to mind somebody else that you say, boy, they need to see this. Well, share it with them. It's okay. You can share, give them a link, send them the link, send them the where to go, you know, and encourage them to watch, you know, because we don't need to live our whole life with, you know, carrying these wounds and carrying these scars. We really don't need really to do that. You know, God wants you to be free from the pain, and he wants you to learn how to become the best son and the best father possible. We could do that. We can. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time, being on the podcast, sharing. You know, we put out a new one of these once a month. The first of the month, we come up with a new one. So if you enjoyed the podcast, you know, please share it with someone else. If you want to find other episodes, well, the easiest way to do that, just go to my website, DennisLabriola.com, DennisLabriola, all one word, .com. Go to YouTube, you know, there's a link there, and you can find this podcast, other podcasts. You know, I would, you know, subscribe to it, tell people about it, you know, whatever you like, you know, and please feel free to reach out to me. You can do that through the website as well. If you have a question, you want to need a follow-up, something like that. Maybe you want to find out something about my book. I have, you know, see, most of my father stuff, it's all, I wrote a lot of it down in this little book. All right. It's all short stories, available Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. There's a commercial. All right. You know, if you're a men's group or a church or something like that, you're looking for someone to come in and speak, I do that too. And we welcome all of that. So until next time, I want to leave you with this thought. And that is that whether you recognize it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you even believe it or not, God is and has been with you. Any last words?
When the mentee is ready, then the mentor appears.
When the mentee is ready, the mentor appears. And with that, be blessed.
Be blessed. We love you guys.
Love you. Right. Bye-bye.